Today we're talking with Dr. John McDougall and Dr. Hans Deal about how food affects our heart. Now, we were just mentioning before the break how other societies, other countries are not experiencing the heart disease that we are, and we didn't have it 100 years ago. And the difference is?
Well, it's largely what we do to ourselves.
Okay.
How we eat, how we exercise, if we smoke, how we love. All these kind of factors are coalescing into creating this epidemic. But probably the most important factor is how we eat.
How we eat. Now, you mentioned smoking and other things are a part of this, but if you're not a smoker, you can still have heart disease simply because of the way you eat.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's the wrong emphasis, Mike.
Oh, help me out.
It's the food. It's the food, and smoking is an issue, and exercise is an issue, but they're used as scapegoats.
Yeah.
Not that I'm trying to say anything good about it.
It's still important.
The problems with food.
Right.
We eat a diet for kings and queens. It's the wrong food for people. They die. And it's a really mass murder out there. I can't say it any other way. And you know what? The government and the doctors and the scientists know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And still, for profits, people die, get fat, and get sickened. It's just a matter of feeding cheese and meat and so on to people and making profits. It's a sad thing. As Dr. Deal was saying, in countries like Japan, where they smoke, they have very little heart disease.
In spite of the smoking, very little heart disease because of the different diet.
It's the food.
Diet.
I mean, we eat our way into this problem. Can we eat our way out, or we just stop creating any more damage?
Yeah, we can eat our way into it. We do that very successfully in our society.
Yeah, we're
right?
good at that in the United States. We are.
Right. But you know, when you begin to go back to a more, shall we say, natural diet, whole foods diet, as you begin to eat more of the vegetables and fruits and beans and whole grains, more food as it comes to the nature, something happens. The cholesterol levels go down, the weight goes down, the fat levels go down, and you begin to see a gradual melting down of these plaques on the inside.
That's
Those
amazing.
pimples no longer pop.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they begin to regress. And that's what you want.
Well, now, we've got a video that we'd like to show right now that illustrates the effects of a poor diet. And it's rather graphic, so watch this video. We'll be right back.
Woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, "Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What did you have?" He said, "I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake." And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
That video is absolutely stunning.
Oh my goodness.
It's incredible.
I can't believe it.
And if that won't change your mind about the food, then really nothing's going to do it, is it?
And in our studies, what we've been able to do is to use very expensive, high-tech, state-of-the-art measures to prove how powerful these very simple and low-tech and low-cost and in many ways ancient interventions can be. We first began by looking at heart disease. And when I began doing this work 26 or 7 years ago, it was thought that once you had heart disease, it can only get worse. And what we found was that instead of getting worse and worse, in many cases it could get better and better, and much more quickly than people had once realized. This is a representative patient who at the time was 73, told he needed to have a bypass, decided to do this instead. We used quantitative arteriography showing the narrowing. This is one of the arteries that feeds the heart, one of the main arteries, and you can see the narrowing here. A year later, it's not as clogged. Normally it goes the other direction. These moderate changes in blockages caused a 300% improvement in blood flow, and using cardiac positron emission tomography or PET scans, blue and black is no blood flow, orange and white is maximal. Huge differences can occur without drugs, without surgery. Clinically, he literally couldn't walk across the street without getting severe chest pain. Within a month, like most people, was pain-free, and within a year climbing more than 100 floors a day on a Stairmaster. This is not unusual, and it's part of what enables people to maintain these kinds of changes because it makes such a big difference in their quality of life. Overall, if you looked at all the arteries in all the patients, they got worse and worse from 1 year to 5 years in the comparison group. This is the natural history of heart disease, but it's really not natural because we found it could get better and much more quickly than people had once thought. We also found that the more people changed, the better they got. It wasn't so a function of how old or how sick they were, it was mainly how much they changed. And the oldest patients improved as much as the younger ones. I got this as a Christmas card a few years ago from two of the patients in one of our programs. The younger brother's 86, the older one's 95. They wanted to show me how much more flexible they were. And the following year they sent me this one, which I thought was kind of funny. You just never know. And what we found was that 99% of the patients stopped or reversed the progression of their heart disease. Now I thought, if we just did good science, that would change medical practice, but that was a little naive. It's important, but not enough, because we doctors do what we get paid to do, and we get trained to do what we get paid to do. So if we change insurance, then we change medical practice and medical education. Insurance will cover the bypass, it'll cover the angioplasty, but won't until recently cover diet and lifestyle. And your body has a remarkable capacity to begin healing itself, and much more quickly than people had once realized, if you simply stop doing what's causing the problem. And so really, so much of what we do in medicine and life in general is focused on mopping up the floor without also turning off the faucet.
Take a look over here, and I don't know if you can appreciate this, where the arrow is. This is a coronary blood vessel, and this is what one of those narrowings looks like. This is what a heart attack waiting to happen looks like. This is someone who decided not to undergo surgery, which was recommended, instead using food as medicine. And take a look now over here, same spot, and that coronary blood vessel is essentially, it's opened up. It's about the same normal caliber as the rest of the blood vessel. That is sort of what we're talking about here, Ali, in terms of providing some sort of objective evidence. Remarkably, despite the fact that, again, Hippocrates has talked about this for over 1,000 years, this is still a relatively nascent science. I think more studies are going to be done. You can see more images like that.
And these patients that have been profiled who have followed these diets to reduce their clogging of their arteries, have they prevented heart attacks?
Well, let me tell you, yes. And let me tell you the study that basically pivoted me into saying we should do this as a full hour. It's still a relatively small study because this is some emerging science, but Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, basically he followed patients for 12 years, and what he found was that 6 patients out of a group of about 18 dropped out of the study, and out of those 6 patients, they all had some sort of coronary event. 2 patients died, 4 patients needed bypass surgery. Of the patients who stayed through, kept the diet, kept it going for 12 years, so most patients were able to do that. Only 1 patient died, and in an autopsy, that patient did not have any evidence of heart disease. So again, Ali, the evidence is pretty compelling, not only in terms of slowing down the progression, but really reversing it. These patients needed to have heart surgery, and then they essentially needed no interventions whatsoever over a 12-year period.
That is incredible that you can undo that damage.